very professional musicians, like my beloved Cory Wong, they talk about this.
You shouldn't record with a click in the first place. Just play your natural, whatever, feeling, dynamics, and like tempo.
I don't need to play on the click because it sounds cooler. He worked with Dr. Dre. This guy had this sort of norm of bumping up the BPMs at the end of the session.
This is awesome. Yeah, I love this topic.
Yeah.
Let's listen to this.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go.
Choosing the right tempo and key for your song is actually key for your song. Like, it is very important to do that. And a lot of artists neglect that and don't really think enough about it in the production process. We wanted to do this episode today to talk about those two very important things because they directly affect the feel, the impact, and ultimately the sound of your recordings. And not enough people are paying attention to this. I am Benedict Hein. I run a mixing studio called Outback Recordings. I'm the host of this show. We mix a lot of songs every year. We've been doing this full time for 15 years at this point. And we've learned a lot over the years. And everything we've learned from working with so many artists from all over the world, with labels, with DIY artists, all kinds of different people, all those things we share with you on this podcast and the platform, theselfrecordingband.com. So hi, if you're a new listener, awesome to have you. Thank you for joining us. If you are coming back and you're already a listener, thank you for coming back. That's awesome. For whatever reason, you keep listening to the show, and I'm very happy that you do. And as always, I am not doing this by myself. I'm joined by my amazing friend and co-host, Manel Espinosa Berenguer. And this episode is actually his episode. He did the outline of all of that, and he had the idea to do it, and I'm super pumped about it, super excited. So, hello, Manel. Tell us more about you and what you've prepared for us today.
Hello. So, if you don't know me yet, I'm Manel Espinosa, as Benedict said, and I'm a music producer and mixing engineer based in Spain who enjoys making great songs with great artists and, trying to make the best of their skills, basically. And so what we are gonna talk about today, as Benedict also mentioned before, is key and tempo, which are two aspects that I believe are crucial before you get into mixing, because as we've said many times in this podcast, like, we enjoy mixing is great, but mixing cannot fix a bad song or a bad production or a bad pre-production. And I think that, key and tempo are very important aspects for you to get the best of your song before mixing, before recording, and before anything else. So, let's dive into it, right? I've got some presents ready for Benedict.
I can't wait to see those and hear those. As far as I know, I don't know much about it. I saw the notes, of course, the outline, and I've downloaded a couple of examples that you've prepared for us today. So this is going to be another episode with actual audio examples. But I let you guide us through this episode, and you just tell me what to do, what to play, and then I hope I can, whatever you have planned, but I'm very excited because, this is the whole point of this new format that we're doing here, is like this new dynamic between me primarily being a mixer. I've produced a lot of songs and records, and I still, when I'm mixing, I still consider myself as kind of co-producing, and I'm all about the art and the music and the song. So it's not that I'm just this technical nerd, but like, I'm really into doing the best for the song, serving the artist and all that. But I'm not at the studio with artists anymore as much, like some projects here and there, but not as much anymore. And so a lot of it is remote. And for the most part, the people I work with produce somewhere else themselves or at the studio. And you, Manel, you work more directly with the artist, and you do much more of the actual production work at the beginning. And so things like choosing tempo and key, I can have an opinion on that and talk to the artists before they send me stuff, but it's oftentimes not my job to directly change that or be a part of that process. But it is very much for you. So I am absolutely excited to be able to do these kinds of episodes and hear your perspective, because we can all learn from that. Anyway, tell me what I need to do or what we're going to be doing.
Well, we want to start with tempo, and we're gonna start with like simple stuff, and then the most like simple thing that I can think about is for artists to choose the right tempo for the song, right? And you don't really need to fix that at the very beginning, because when you're producing the song, that can change, right? But it is really important to like try the same demo you already have on different tempos and see what changes, because the vibe is gonna change quite a lot, because like a change of 3 BPMs can make a big difference. And also like from there we go to the point where we can also change the BPMs during the song, as you mentioned in previous podcasts. So can you first tell me what of those things have you used in the past?
So you mean experimenting with different tempos and or like tempo changes?
Yeah, because you told me a couple of weeks ago that you used to, change the BPMs for the chorus or for a feel or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is great you start with the conversation with that, because for many people, I think it might, it can sound obvious, but then also I know for a fact that a lot of people don't really think about this even. They just choose a tempo and then they play it and that's it, and they never think about it again. They don't even try and see how it affects the feel if you go, 2 or 3 BPMs up or down, if you change it during the song. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. So yeah, I've done all of the things you just said. So first of all, when I was producing a lot, or when I'm writing my own music, or even when I'm talking to people that I work with and help them get the things right at the source, first of all, we define, like I ask is this going to be the same tempo throughout the song, or is it obvious that there are going to be tempo changes, like big changes? Sometimes you have a tempo map because it's just completely different tempo in certain parts. If they think it's just a static tempo, I like to question that. So I like to figure out, okay, let's figure out what would be the static tempo and go up a couple of dBs or down and see if that changes things for the better or if it gets worse. And then what would often happen is that there would be a situation where we're like, okay, this part works at this tempo. The next one, when we go up a bit, it sounds rushed, so it doesn't work anymore. And then there's this one, maybe breakdown or whatever, that would actually sound cooler if on the lower tempo, but that doesn't work for the other parts. And so we would then find out, well, it would work with a static tempo, but certain parts would be even better if we changed it. And then maybe it's not even a stair-step thing, but it's a gradual transition. Maybe there's this one fill where if we make it slow down a bit, it has even more impact when the next part comes in. Or if we ramp it up a bit, like all these things, we just try those. And another thing that I've done that I like a lot is when the manufactured changes don't sound right for whatever reason, or we get close, but it's not really what we wanted. What I've done a lot with bands that I've produced is I would have, even if we don't do a live recording, even if it's just overdubs, which is the norm for most records, I always try to get in the room with the band, either in their jam space before to do pre-pro, or they would come in a day earlier to the studio and we would do pre-pro here. And I set the band up live as a whole, and I just let them play the whole thing without a click a couple of times. And I would record those takes, and then we would sit down and choose the one that just feels the best. And like we would compare the different ones. Maybe there's a pattern. Maybe they do certain things always the same. Maybe it's pretty different. Depends on the band. But there would be usually one take where we're like, yes, that's the feel. That's exactly it. And then I would create a tempo map based off of that track. And then I would just smooth it out, because there will be pretty wild ups and downs sometimes. But I will like smooth it out a little bit. And then that gives me... that is our map, and that tells me what we need to do. I just let them do their natural thing. Maybe if they're going too drastic, we bring it down a bit, but like that's going to be my thing. And oftentimes it's crystal clear when you do that at this one part they always speed up, or here they always slow down. That's how it's supposed to be, and we wouldn't have thought of that if we just tried to manufacture it in the DAW. So that can be a great approach. But yeah, tried it all, and it was always very important to me to get this right.
That is really interesting, actually. I have a small anecdote from my university days, which is that I went to this masterclass with a I think it was an Irish producer, but I don't remember his name. But that doesn't really matter. I'm sorry, but that doesn't really matter. So he said that he worked with Dr. Dre at some point, and that this guy had this sort of norm of like bumping up the BPMs, like 5 BPMs at the end of the session, like right before closing the session, he would bump up the song 5 BPMs, so that, you know, and he would do that again and again every time until the next day it feels rushed, you know. But he was always trying to, you know, for him, I guess faster was better always. So he would be doing these 5 BPM things until it feels too much.
Okay,
but
that's
like
interesting.
from one day to the next, right? Because if you do it in the moment, it depends on what moment you do it. You can get mixed feelings. But if you hear it fresh and it still is great, then it's great. And
interesting. What do you think? Why did he try to go faster? This is probably a genre thing? Probably, you know, high energy. Maybe also because if the rap still works and there's like it gets more technical, maybe more impressive. If there's the flow is kind of whatever, more aggressive, or maybe it has to do with that. It must be a genre type of thing. But I think you could use the same method the other way around too, or you could just whatever changes you have in mind that might be better, you could do them at the end of the day and then see if the next day, if you come in, if it feels right or better or worse with fresh ears. So it doesn't have to be faster, but the idea of doing it at the end and then only checking it the next day is a great idea, actually.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like for me, I kind of feel like him in a way that I think that I make the music sometimes too slow. But I mean, that's just me. Anyone can have a different vision, different, you know, creativity or whatever. So that's one anecdote. The other anecdote I have is something that I don't want you guys to go through, which is that maybe 10 years ago or 6 or 7, whatever, a long time ago, I released a song with my band, and it was a reggae song. And like we had a lovely music video on YouTube and all that. And the first comment was like, please, you should play the song at 1.25 or 1.5 because it sounds way better.
No, that's funny.
And it turned out that we did it and it probably was better, you know. So.
I mean, yeah, it's totally a genre thing though, or like a personal thing. But just the point is that you actually try different things because your first idea might not be the ideal one.
Yeah. I wasn't producing the song, but I don't think we tried any other tempo besides the original one, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a reggae song, and with reggae the thing is that the tempo defines the subgenre between, you know, because reggae is this one thing you can say, but there are many different subgenres that are mostly based on the speed of the thing. So that would have changed the whole thing. Yeah. But whatever, just a small anecdote for you guys listening to. Please try things before that so that you don't have to regret doing it later.
People telling you to speed it up, yeah. All right, cool. All right, let's just try. So let's see how tempo changes can affect the feel of a song, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Where I want to arrive now, you know, is that at this point where even if you stay in the same tempo for the whole song, your performance can affect the feel of that same tempo, because you can choose to play on the grid, you can choose to play behind the grid or ahead, so that it sounds rushed, or maybe it sounds more like how do you call that? Whatever. Slower. But it's not. It's absolutely not like so. What we are gonna hear are different audio examples where you're gonna hopefully notice some things, but I'm not gonna say it yet because you're the guinea pig today. So
Okay, cool. Before we get into this, because I know we're gonna get comments on this. Let me tell people real quick, because there will be people who are like, you shouldn't record with a click in the first place. Just play your natural whatever feeling dynamics and like tempo. Yes and no. I just want to say that to me, if someone can play to a click and still groove, like you just mentioned, where you can still have feel and play with the click, like intentionally behind, intentionally ahead, have a swing, have a groove, whatever, and you have figured out the best tempo for the song, then the click is the best thing ever, because you can, first of all, editing is much easier, syncing up delays and other effects to the tempo is doable, and all these technical things. But then also it will be a groove, a steady groove, and the best musicians do it like that, and they can do it. However, if it's supposed to be improvised and like spontaneous or whatever, then this is a totally completely different conversation, different genre, different aesthetic. And that can be a thing. Even great musicians sometimes intentionally do it without a click because they want to be able to be spontaneous or whatever. But it's totally genre dependent. And then the other thing is, if someone cannot play to a click well, then I'd rather have them record without a click, because someone trying to catch up with the click or trying to stay on the click, but they're not able to, and they lose all of their groove and feel because all they're trying to do is kind of stay on the click, that will ruin everything. So I would much rather have someone play without a click and have natural ups and downs than trying to play to a click but really struggling, because the struggle, you will hear that. And I hate the feel of like, oh, we're losing the click, now we're catching back up. Like, this is not natural changes in tempo. And so if that is you, maybe try without a click. But I would then also say practice so that one day you can do it to a click with groove, because I think that is the gold standard in most cases. Just saying. But I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. So you can now stop typing out your comment and just listen to, to the examples that Manel's going to bring.
That's important, but in this case, the click is not as important.
Okay.
Like, the important thing is the relationship between the different instruments. Like, because you can have the drums and they can play without a click, but you as bassist or guitar player, you decide if you go before the drums or like after the drums, and that will change the feel.
Yeah, totally.
The thing is that in this case, the click is our guide.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But
so we're not talking about changes in tempo. We're talking about changes in the interaction between the instruments in these examples, or what are we?
Yes, but you could imagine, like, there's the grid you have in your DAW, and in those lines, that's where the kick and the snare land, and you can play your guitar slightly before that, so it's gonna sound rushed, or after that, so it's gonna sound, more like slower. I don't know how to call it.
No, absolutely. And also the fact alone that, like, that's something I love to do, by the way, often is you can have a super tight on the grid, just an example, you can have a super tight on the grid rhythm section, for example, or bass and drums or whatever, but then have the guitars a little more loose around that, or everything's super tight, but the vocal can be, more free or whatever. And sometimes that is the freedom and the more loose timing and feel is only possible if something else is holding it together and stays really tight. So this is awesome. Yeah, I love this topic. Yeah. Let's listen to this. So what do I play? And then what is my task after we've heard it?
So you're gonna play the examples 1, 2, and 3, and you're gonna try to tell me what's the difference.
Man, I hate this already. No, I love it. Let's see.
It's gonna be difficult. Like, I think I would not be able to tell that easy.
Oh, great!
Let's just play with you.
Yeah, you deserve it. You can. That's your time to play with me now. Okay, let's see. Here's number 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Number 2.
And number 3.
So, what do you think?
Can I hear 1 again?
Yeah.
Okay, I just play them back to back again. I think I hear what's going on. I might be wrong, but my guess is, to me, how I perceived it is there's definitely a difference in how the guitars feel compared to the drums, like the how tight they are together. And to me, the first one, and I kind of doubt it because it seems so simple that you start with the tight one, but it sounds to me like the first one is pretty spot on between drums and guitars.
Yes.
Good. And the second one, I hope I don't get them confused now, but I think the second one, the guitars were early, and on the third one, the guitars were late, like dragging.
Oh my God. Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, that's great.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah, the second one felt a little rushed. So in the second one, I had the feel of like, I wanted the kick drum on the, but like I was always like waiting a little bit for the kick drum to hit, and it was not so much a funny thing is I think the guitars are early, but it sounds almost like the drums are late. But I think the drums are actually where they're supposed to be, and the guitars are a little early. But it made me think that the drums, I was always waiting a little for the drum impact. And on the third one, it was the opposite. On the third one, I was waiting for the guitar steps, like they came in a little later than I expected them, and it just creates a different feel. And none of them are wrong. It just is a different feel.
yeah, the thing is, in this case, the guitars were all the time in the same place, but I was only moving the drums.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
But, that doesn't matter because what matters is the relationship between the instruments. Like when the drums were rushing, the guitars were in the right place, so to speak, but it felt like, they were maybe pulling instead of, so whatever. The thing is that the relationship between the instruments can change the feel of the song. And this is something that you can have a section on your song that sounds rushed and another section that sounds different, And I know that some very professional musicians, like my beloved Cory Wong, they talk about this when they are rehearsing, like, we're going to make this section rushed. So you're going to try to play, faster or whatever, but it's still the same tempo, Yeah. So that's very important.
Absolutely. I love to play with that kind of stuff. In my genre of the bands that I was a part of as a musician, the kind of hardcore punk kind of bands, whenever we had a halftime breakdown, something that's supposed to feel heavy and like, the kind of not the fast punk kind of groove, but halftime heavy stuff. If the snare, for example, is slightly behind, slightly laid back sounding, that often sounds so much heavier when you expect the impact, but then it's slightly late, slightly dragging, and it just, I don't know, it gives a whole other level of weight to that track. And or when a big part comes in and you hear the strum of the pick attack of the guitar, but then the kick and crash is slightly late, and it's a different impact compared to the super tight thing,
So now that you're mentioning that, you're going to play 6 and 7.
All right.
Yeah.
6 and 7. Okay, here's 6. 7. One more time, 6.
Mm-hmm.
Really good example. I think 7 is tight, and 6 is drums are late. Am I wrong?
Yes.
Shit. Okay, 6 for whatever reason, 7 sounded tighter to me, and 6
Okay.
had more of a groove.
Okay, so, well, 6 was everything like on the grid,
Really?
and 7 was the guitars like pulling.
Like the guitars were later.
Yes,
Interesting.
well, guitars and bass, I mean, yeah.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Did you edit it so that when it was tight, which was the case in 6, I think you said,
Yeah.
was the pick attack on the drums or the big part of the waveform after the pick attack?
I don't remember.
Because what oftentimes happens it can happen with editing or when you align things, is that when you move the pick attack, like the first attack of the pick hitting the strings, if you put that on the drums, it can sound a little late because the buildup of the tone of the amp and of the chuck, the palm mute thing, is then slightly behind the drums, and the pick attack is spot on. And sometimes if you visually align them so that the big part of the waveform where it goes up is on the drums, then the pick attack is slightly early. And so I was just wondering how you prepared it. Anyway, interesting. Now that I know this, I want to listen one more time. So you say 6 is tight and 7 guitars are late.
Yes.
Okay.
But in this case, like, it was difficult for me to play it tight because I really like when the guitars are late.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds more heavy at the end to me. Like,
When the guitars are late, or when I mean, it depends on the part. In a part like this, it could be when the guitars are late. To me, it's and see, this is so interesting about these conversations. To me, it often sounds heavier when the drums are late, but interestingly, mostly the snare. So what I sometimes like in parts like this is that the kick and guitars are pretty much spot on, but the snare is slightly behind and dragging a little bit. So, but everyone has different, tastes and preferences, and
yeah, that's another interesting point that we're gonna like touch on later.
Okay.
But it is that also in between, like, especially with the drum kit, you can have elements that are on the grid and elements that are not. And it's very like typical, for example, in hip hop, to have the hi-hats quite late.
Yeah,
like,
to the
so
point
that
where they're obviously late. Like,
that creates something different.
Yeah, I love that feel too. Like some of the trap hi-hat stuff or in hip hop in general, like when it's really, really late, it took me a while to appreciate that, but now I'm really into it. Yeah, some of the lo-fi beat stuff have that as well, and that's cool. Okay, one more time, 6 and 7. So 6 is tight, 7 guitars are late. It's going to be interesting now if it changes when we know that. How we perceive it. I actually made a mistake when I said what I said before. To me, still 7 sounds tighter, But on 6, guitars were not late; they were early. And so yes, guitars are later at 7. I totally agree. It's funny how on 6 I perceive the pick attack to be not on the kicks. It sounds to me as if the pick attack was earlier, and on the 7 it sounds like the pick attack is on the drums, and then the buildup of the amp is slightly later. That's why I was asking that question. That's why to me 7 sounds tight, because I'm listening to where the pick is on the drums, but you're right, the build-up, the actual note is later, and on 6 the note is on the drum, but I'm hearing the scratch of the string slightly before the drum. That's how I perceive it. I might be wrong, but like, interesting how different it feels. And what I definitely agree with, and if I think that's your opinion, 7 has much more groove. It's just, it works way better. 6 feels something's off.
Yeah, but also, I don't know, it depends on the song. You can have some reason to use 6 for, I don't know, whatever reason.
Interesting how a small, and I bet it's just a small difference, right? So it's interesting how to me, it sounds drastically different.
Yeah. And so, as we were talking about this before, like there are different elements, especially when I'm talking about the drum kit, where you can, change the groove, right? But also in between, like if you're playing guitar or bass or anything, you can take a bar, for example, and play some of the notes late and some of them on the grid, so that it creates some sort of instability. And like that happens a lot with, for example, Latin music, because like the rhythms sometimes are not like perfect in a sense, like because it has some sort of groove to it, right? So we're gonna have some of that in the next examples, in the example 8 and 9.
Okay.
And just again, try to tell me. This one is, I guess, more difficult, but I know. Just try.
I guess now we're leaving my comfort zone genre-wise.
But it's not Latin music.
Okay.
That was just an example.
Okay.
It's, well, I don't even know what it is.
Okay.
Whatever, it came from my hands.
So did you play all of these and record them for this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay, let's see the next one. So 8 and 9, right?
Yes.
Okay, so 8 is going to be first. Okay. 9. Is only one thing changing? Or is there multiple things?
Like the drums are the same.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the relationship, like...
Then there are some notes on the guitar and bass that are late, and some others are.
Yeah. No, it's funny how, okay, I caught that, but like I'm gonna tell you, but it's funny how to me I hear those notes and I'm gonna say what they are, but for whatever reason, the entire thing feels also moved a little bit, which is probably not the case, but it like felt like it. I listen one more time and then I'll tell you what I hear exactly. So definitely to me in 9 the guitars are later, and it's on the snare. It's like we're waiting for that note a little bit. It's the dum like that one comes in delayed. So that was the one that I heard the first time, and it's funny how the thing sounds later, but it took me a while to understand if the guitar or the drums are late, because at first I thought the snare's late, but it overall just feels later a little bit, just a little. There's this little extra blink of an eye that we're waiting for this ding, ding, diddle, ding, and I love that feel. But why I asked the question was, did the one also change? Because the very first note, the bump, when the guitars came in, on the first one, the guitar was clearly in front of the drums, and on the second one, it was super tight on the kick drum.
Okay, my intention was to make the first one on the kick drum and the second one a bit late.
But it was later, not just the snare, the offbeat, but the one was later too.
Yeah.
But because if you listen again, it's just for that first note. On 8, I think I'm hearing the guitar before the drum. And on 9 is one transient, and 8 is rump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's also interesting. It's also a good example. Like, listen to the difference in just that one note. Like 8, 9. It might not be the playing. Maybe there's just a little noise before the note or something, that it was not cut off. But how different it feels when there's a rum, dim, or it's a bam, bam. It's a completely different feel.
Yeah.
And let's listen once again to that. And so are all these kick drums, like the first note, is all of that late too? Like, which are the notes that are late? I just caught the snare ones, and then that one always like felt a little later, but maybe the whole thing is late. I don't know.
The drums are the same in both, like exactly the same. And then the guitars have those 2 notes late. And then when those notes repeat again later on,
the
they
first
are also
notes,
late.
The dum, and then the rest is on, and then dum is late again.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the second time, it's in a different part of the
yeah, I know what you mean.
thing, but
the same 2
those
notes.
same notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always the kick and that snare afterwards, basically, more or less. Let's listen to that again. It's fascinating how this is really cool. So, number 8. And 9. So cool. And I think you didn't just edit this, you played it differently, right?
Yeah, I played it twice. Yeah, because that doesn't work with editing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it does to a degree, but it's important to the point is to play it differently. Yeah, I think that's.
And I wanted to feel like a good guitar player.
yeah. You are. No, I'm saying
I can
it
play this
because what's interesting also, if you pay attention, is the first thing that's probably sticks out to most people is the main notes of that riff. It's like the dim 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 dim, that kind of stuff. But in between, you have these ghost notes. You have the dim, these things in between. Yeah. And it's interesting when you do the first one that's tight, it's almost like a steady hi-hat going through where you have a micro timing that's all the time, pretty consistently. And on the second one, where you played a little late intentionally, the groove of these ghost notes obviously changes a little bit. It's almost like there's a slight bit of a shuffle in there, or like it's just different and not as steady like a shaker as it is on the first one. And it's hard to play that because you want the steady feel, but then some of the notes are delayed. And it's like, but those are the nuances that great players, pay attention to. And to me, it feels very different. And the second one definitely has a groove that the first one doesn't have. When I heard it the first time, I was like, oh, that's a cool riff on the first one. And then the second one came in, and I immediately was moving differently. It's like, it's like, I don't know, it's just a different, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like the unpredictability of it.
Yeah.
It gives it a different flavor, but
more interesting also. It's like, I don't know, it made me smile.
It is important to, don't think about this as like, I don't need to play on the click because it sounds cooler. No. Good point. It has to be intentional.
Yes.
Like, I'm doing this because I want these two notes to be laid, and I'm able to do that. And that's really, like, it's really difficult. I think if I had to play that for 1 minute, it would be really difficult to like stay there with those two notes dragging all the time and stuff. It's very difficult to like do it consistently.
Absolutely. Intentionality is everything here. It's not about random, changes in tempo and feel. It is, and you just got to be aware of why it feels different to you and if you want that or not. And maybe, again, in some cases, the first one might be the right choice, because it can be that if there's a vocal on top of that, and maybe the vocal has a slightly late thing or early thing or whatever, then maybe it's better to keep the whole rhythm section tight together and something else can be loose. It's all about knowing the tools in your toolbox and then using them intentionally, as with everything in audio and music. And sometimes if you don't know yet what you want, the only way to find out is try both and see how it works, and learn by doing that. It's the important takeaway is just to know that it's going to affect the sound and feel of your song a lot more than some of the other things. Like the difference between 8 and 9 in timing is more important to me than 2 dBs more or less at 2 kilohertz on the guitar. So that's the important takeaway here, is that these things really matter, and they can make or break the groove at the end of the day. They can be the difference between people dancing to this or not. And and some other tweaks are not nearly as important. That's the whole point of this episode, I guess.
Yeah. So the next point, which is pretty much related to this, is to swing or not to swing.
All right.
Because there's, you can have your quavers straight, or you can swing them, right? And with if you swing them, that would be considered like 100% swing, right? But there's a space between 0 and 100.
Yes.
Right? And especially if you work with a DAW, you can change that easily on your drums or whatever, so that especially that you will note that, I guess, more obviously on the hi-hats, that instead of being like it's not even like it's something in between, right?
Yep.
And that can also change the mood of the thing. So now you're gonna play the next ones, like 4 and 5.
Okay.
And tell me which one is the swinged, slightly swinged. It's not full swing. And yeah.
Cool. Okay, one more time. These were both back to back, so this is 4. And 5. It's interesting because I hear a little bit of a swing in both, but I'm probably wrong. One more time, back to back. I'm so nervous because I could always be so wrong. But like, so there is a clear difference in feel. To me, all of that has a little bit of a swing and groove. Like it's not really super steady.
Yeah.
Like it's probably not 100% quantized, and all that. I'm just gonna say, so to me, 5 feels more like a swing, and 4 feels tighter. But I might be wrong. I'm wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
And maybe I listened to the wrong thing. What I like 4 makes more sense to me. Like the groove, I liked it more on 4. But when I tried to, and maybe I listened to the wrong thing. What I did is I tried to do like I hand drummed 8th notes to it, and for whatever reason on 4. It was easier for me to stay on the exactly where the guitar did the transients, and on 5 I was kind of off when I did it. But maybe I had a swing in my 8th notes. I don't know.
Yeah, but in this case, the thing is that the guitars were the same.
I only paid attention to the guitars, and I drummed to the guitars, and I thought the guitars would be different. Maybe I adapted to the beat in the background. Then
it was the only difference is the drums, and you can notice it if you listen to the hi-hats.
Shit, I didn't even pay attention to the drums really. What I did was I listened to the guitar on the right that did the main kind of riff, a lick, and I tried to hear a difference there, and it felt different because the drums were different. But I thought the guitar made a difference. Interesting. Let me listen again. So it's the drums that are different.
Yes, and I mean you can notice that mostly on the hi-hat because the other elements are not playing that figure. So
okay, let's see. And 4 one more time. Okay, definitely 4 with the swing. It's more of a kind of feel almost, not as drastic, but more than like the 5. Interesting is though that 4 still feels tighter to me because that matches, to me at least, matches better what the guitars do. It just feels better. And 5 felt different to me, and I thought that's why that had a kind of a swing in the guitars or whatever, because I don't think that the straight hi-hats in 5 are feeling as good with the guitars as the slightly swinged in 4.
Yeah. Maybe I just I have swing in my hands.
No, but the hi-hat matches the guitar better. And so it has a swing in the hi-hats, but overall it feels tighter. Because maybe there was a little bit of a swing in the guitar to begin with. I don't know. It just feels better to me. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So, and then the next point and final point about the tempo thing.
Yeah, but one more thing before we get to that. Did you explain to people what swing actually is?
No.
Really? just in a shortest form possible, just so people know what to listen for if they're wondering now, what do I listen for? Like, what is swing?
We have 2 notes when it is straight, and when it's swinged, the second note comes a little bit later.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
So
how late it comes, that's how much swing you put into it, basically.
So it would be the difference between that and that, which would be three notes. You leave one out, and then you have the swing, basically.
Yeah.
And so that would be 100% swing. And obviously, if you don't want the triplet feel and the 100% swing, you can do a little less of that. And there's a range between straight notes and the swinged notes, right?
Yes.
So with hi-hats, it would be, instead of a tss, 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 you turn that into a tss, 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 and anything in between.
Yeah. Yes. That's it.
Yeah. Cool. Just for people, in case people are wondering.
That was really difficult to notice, probably, for...
Yeah, but that's the point. But it's still, I think what's not difficult is, even for people who don't know this, almost everybody will be able to hear that it feels different. They might not be able to tell why, but it feels different. And one might make you move and the other might not. So
yeah. And in this case, the guitars were exactly the same things. Copied. The same tracks. Copied. So...
Okay. You know what, Manel? We should, do we have one more in terms of tempo? I'm just saying one thing real quick for the audience. We will turn this into a 2-part episode. We will cover key on the next one. I think that's going to be better.
Makes
then
sense.
we have 2 long episodes where we can go in depth. Even better. But let's continue with whatever we have for the tempo.
Yeah, the only last thing that I wanted to talk about is the differences between genres, right? Because in this sort of funk stuff, that might be more common, but maybe, if we're talking about rock music or faster music in general, maybe it's, what do you think about it? How do the most of the bands you work with think about tempo
compared to other genres? Or
how do they think in that sort of rock punk world? Have you heard about this at all?
Not to that degree. Not to that degree. I wish more would, because it makes such a big difference. But it really depends on how experienced they are and how good they are as musicians. So the more experienced, better bands, yes, they know about this stuff. Mostly the good drummers, and it's often like I said, with those halftime parts. How can we make that a little heavier? How can we make that feel a little different? Good rhythm guitar players obviously also know when to play spot on, when to be a little, behind with the riff or something. So yeah, the good ones definitely know. So it's definitely not an unheard of thing. But the nuance, and especially things like swing, I would say things like in general being early or slightly behind, making changes based on the part, having a snare a little late or something. Those things, yes, for the good bands. Less experienced bands, I would say not at all, but oftentimes not. But things like swing or shuffle or stuff like that, it's just not really a genre thing. So that's rarely talked about. And it can sometimes still be cool, but it's rarely ever talked about. It's mostly pretty straight, but there can be differences in if it's being a little rushed or laid back, for example. Those other things. And what a lot of inexperienced bands are doing is they don't care about that at all. So what a lot of people do is they are either too tight on the grid, in this day and age where everybody programs everything, the drums and all that, or quantizes everything, and they play a DI track to the programmed drums and then they quantize that. So they either go in that extreme and it's all 100% perfect on the grid all the time, which can be an aesthetic for certain genres. Some metal stuff that's really technical, the part of the aesthetic is to be super accurate and tight. But that is the one extreme, and then or the other extreme is that they refuse to, do anything that gets in the way of their natural feel, and in most cases, their natural feel is pretty shitty. So it's oftentimes I don't want to use a click, or I don't want to do editing, or I don't want to pay attention to these things is oftentimes just an excuse to they want to justify their sloppy playing. It's actually just sloppy playing that is not intentional, but they try to make it a feel thing when it's really not. And I'm sorry
Yeah.
if that is you and I offended you listening to this now, but it's the truth. It's what a lot of people do. And very rarely are there people who are very intentional about this. And it's usually the more experienced, better ones. And for the other ones, I see the two extremes more or less.
Yeah, the thing is that the way this works is that first you need to be able to play on the grid.
Yeah.
And then you decide if you
Yeah, and then you can leave it.
do other things.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the you need to know the rules more or less so that you can then break them intentionally. That's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think in your genres, genres, but you are using more influences from different genres. So I think for you, the funk stuff, the Latin stuff, all these influences, things like swing and that is like even much more important. And I bet you do more experimenting with that. And for me, it's mostly, is this too slow? Is this too fast? Or is this right? And then the second question is, can we make any of those elements slightly late or slightly early? And that's the end of the conversation. There's, so I bet you go a lot deeper in most of the stuff that you work on.
Yeah, I know, because just in case you didn't notice before, I love Cory Wong. So I know, because I've seen many interviews he's done and all that with funk music, there are some like regions in America where the normal thing would be to, for example, for the guitar player to play behind. And in other regions, it's more on the grid,
Yeah.
So that defines the sound of every place. Maybe in Minneapolis, they play on the grid or whatever. I don't know exactly how it is. But also,
Totally true.
He talked in an interview about, like, he came on tour to Europe, like maybe 1 or 2 years ago, and his bass player could not play, so he got a bass player from Spain, which is an awesome player, like Vincent Garcia.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that, he's awesome, but they had to negotiate some things because the European groove, the European way of playing is different in some aspects, right? So they had to have a talk about it, that's very, very nitty gritty things.
No, it is.
But
we actually had a conversation, a little bit of a off-topic discussion in our coaching community at some point, because what I've noticed a lot is that when, for example, in Europe, when people clap to music, like traditional music, or old people, I'm just saying, like old people in like TV shows where they play, whatever old people listen to in Germany or Europe, especially those, but in general, people over here tend to clap on 1 and 3. They do the 1, 2, 3, 4. Whereas in the US and other parts of the world, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4. They clap on 2 and 4.
Yeah.
And it's very weird for the one group to see what the other group does. And the difference is not just where they clap. It causes a different feel in how they perceive music. I don't know what it has to do with. We had this discussion and people said maybe it's because of the marching music in Europe or whatever that's really straight and it's like 1, 2, 3. Because I think if you do the 2 and 4 thing, there is immediately more of a groove to it. You have a little bit of freedom to where you place that clap, and it's less strict to me. There's also session players in studios in different locations in the world do this differently too. Some prefer with the click for it to be on 1 and 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4, whereas others have an offbeat click. So even a fast one can be in between 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I've seen people play like that, bassists that would play to an offbeat 2 and 4 kind of click, or even 8th note or like quarter notes in between. And they kind of groove. There are players that can make a click sound like it's grooving, like really, where it's a static click, but you believe that the click has a groove when you hear those people play. It's fascinating. And it's really a location thing. I've witnessed that a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah, I think many people recommend practicing with click on 2 and 4 to like improve your groove and rhythm playing especially and all that.
Yeah. Lots of things to experiment with to, see if that makes a difference for you. I hope this was a cool, fun episode for you guys listening. Next week, we're going to cover key, which is just as important. I can't wait to talk about that to you, Manel. Thank you so much for preparing this, Manel. This was awesome. Very, very exciting and helpful and interesting for me as well. And if you liked this episode, please leave us a comment on YouTube, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We always appreciate that. And if you want to be part of an amazing community where we discuss things like that, then and where you can learn and get feedback on whether you nail those things or not and all those things, then please go to theselfrecordingband.com, apply for working with us. Let's have a conversation, see if our coaching and mentoring is a great fit for you. And I hope to see you there soon. And of course, if you want someone who has tons of experience with that kind of thing, who can take your song ideas to finished songs that actually groove and can help you decide which groove is right and all those things. And you heard his playing skills as well. Please go to Manel's website and hit him up and ask him to work with you because he's really good at those kind of things.
manelitomusica.com.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for listening. See you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.